And we are back. Welcome to my predictions for the penultimate round of matches in the Europa League. It is time for match day 7, and we've got matches coming at you all 3 days this week. There's a game today, there's a game tomorrow, and then all the remaining games are on Thursday. Speaking of games taking place today, if you missed yesterday's video, which was, of course, my Champions League predictions for this week, you can check that out with the link at the top of your screen right now. And, of course, don't forget to drop a like on this video if you do enjoy all of my predictions series, and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. We, of course, have my reaction to the Manchester United Rangers game coming for you on Thursday, and then it'll be another round of Premier League predictions for you coming up this weekend. Let's move ahead to the prediction screen, where you'll see that so far in this Europa League, we are on 59 out of 108 in terms of results. It's been a tough competition to call, and believe me, it's only going to get tougher today. 8 correct scores so far for me as well, but this is what we've got coming up for you. We've got one match, like I say, today. That is the Galatasaray Dynamo game. One match tomorrow between Besiktas and Bilbao, and then we've got 8 matches kicking off early on Thursday, and then the other page will have the 8 matches kicking off late on Thursday. So without any further ado, let's get into it. The opening match of the Europa League this week kicks off at 3:30 today, and it is between Galatasaray and Dynamo Kiev. And to be honest, this is probably the easiest Europa League prediction of the week. Galatasaray, as you can see, 6th. They are unbeaten in this Europa League. They have 3 wins and 3 draws and are unbeaten in the last 24 matches in all competitions. Dynamo Kiev sit at the bottom of the table. They have 0 points and are the only side that are mathematically already eliminated. All the remaining 35 teams can still get at least a playoff spot, even though for some of them it would be near impossible to do it. But it is still possible for the rest of them. But for Dynamo Kiev, they are already out. And they haven't kicked a ball since December as well. So they're not going to be match sharp either. For Galatasaray, their only real missing player for this one is going to be Mauro Icardi. He's out for the season. Everyone else is fit and firing for them. For me, it's a Galatasaray win. It's just going to be a case of the scoreline. And the only thing that makes this fixture a little bit interesting is that Galatasaray have not kept a clean sheet in any of their last 10. Dynamo Kiev have only scored 1 goal in this Europa League so far. So something's going to have to give there. Either Kiev are going to have to sort out their goal-scoring form, or Galatasaray are going to sort out their defensive form. I'm backing the latter. I'm going for a 3-0 win to Galatasaray. On to tomorrow's game, and Ollie's at the wheel. Get in there. He's back in football. He's in charge of Besiktas. It was a 0-0 draw for him on his opening game in charge of Besiktas over in Turkey, which means that actually the Turkish side are now 5 games unbeaten in all competitions, but they have lost their last 2 games in this competition, which is why they languish outside of even the playoff spots at the moment. For Bilbao, in this competition, it's been 5 wins and a draw. They've played some fantastic stuff, but have actually struggled more recently in their domestic form, losing to the likes of Barcelona, even losing to Osasuna before getting a nice little win against Celta Vigo at the weekend. There are no fresh injury concerns for either side, but in terms of like first-team players missing, Besiktas are still without Gabriel Paulista. It's an interesting one because Besiktas realistically need the win. They're 1 point off the playoffs and they have an away game for match day 8. So a win here or at least a draw here is a necessity for them. For Bilbao, they only need 1 more point to secure themselves a spot in the last 16 guaranteed. So it'd be interesting to see how the two sides approach it. On paper, Bilbao absolutely should be considered the favourite, in my opinion. But with a new manager in charge, with a result being necessary, I'm going to give Besiktas 1. I'm not giving them the win, but I'm giving them a 1-1 draw. From there, all of these predictions for the early kickoffs on Thursday are an absolute nightmare. You just look at the positions of the teams that we're talking about and the forms that we'll talk about in a moment. It is a nightmare, but we're going to do our best. The opening game on Thursday is AZ taking on Roma, and AZ come into this on an 11-game unbeaten run, which has seen them beat another one of the Europa League sides in Ajax back in Holland and drawing with the Champions League side from Holland in PSV Eindhoven. For Roma, under their new manager, or newish manager now, Claudio Ranieri, they're unbeaten in their last 6, which has included results against fellow Europa League side, Europa League leaders Lazio. They've beaten them, and they've drawn away to Champions League sides Bologna and AC Milan. So Both sides are going to be coming into this full of confidence, believing they can get a result. In terms of injuries and suspensions, it's only really Cristante injured for Roma that's going to be missing. AZ and the remainder of the Roma team should be fit and available for this one. So it makes it really, really tough to call between these two sides. Neither can really afford a defeat because they don't want to risk being dropped out of the playoff spots. But both sides desperately want the win because they want to get into those automatic last 16 places. So it's a really difficult dynamic to call. Both sides are playing well at the moment. I can't split them. I'm going for a 2-2 draw. That takes us to Bodo Glimt taking on Maccabi Tel Aviv. For Bodo, they've not played a competitive match since their Matchday 6 game. And in a warm-up game prior to this, they did lose 3-0 to a Champions League side in a friendly last week. Meanwhile, Maccabi have won their last 2 Europa League matches and are only 1 defeat in their last 9 domestically as well. So, in theory, it's actually Maccabi that are coming into this on much better form, much better momentum, and much better freshness. So, it makes it tough to call, even though Bodo are in a much better position in the table. What makes it even more confusing is that in the home games so far for Bodo Glimt, they've beaten Porto, they've beaten Besiktas, but they lost to 33rd place Qarabag. So you just don't even know what you're going to get from Bodo Glimt even when they're at home. So it's really, really tough to call. Both sides have their full teams available to them. I would expect Bodo Glimt to get the win. I really would, especially with them being the home side. So I'm going to go for that. But genuinely, the way that Maccabi have played over the last few weeks, the way that they've played in the last 2 rounds of this Europa League, there is definitely a very good chance they can get a result here. But I'm going for 2-1 to Bodo Glimt. Speaking of sides that should have a chance of winning, I'm backing Olympiacos right off the bat here because Porto are having an absolute shocker at the moment. They've lost all of their last 3 matches. They've only scored once in those 3 matches. Meanwhile, Olympiacos are unbeaten in all of their last 16 matches. Both sides currently occupy a playoff spot, but Olympiacos are ahead by 1 point over Porto. They've basically got everyone fit. They just have Heze suspended for this, whereas Porto have the likes of Vendel, Grujic, Marcano, all injured. And like I said, they're not playing well. It's a real opportunity for Olympiacos here. They're a very good side, especially in Europe. And like I said at the start, I'm going for Olympiacos here. I'm going for 2-1. The last thing to note, though, is that these are 2 sides that have played each other before. And on both occasions back in 2020, Porto won 2-0, both home and away. But you are talking nearly 5 years ago now. So I think Olympiacos will take this. It's going to take a real turnaround in form for Porto to get a result against a side so good in Europe. Next up, it's Fenerbahce taking on Lyon. And again, it's so tough to call. Even though Fenerbahce are 21st and Lyon are 4th. Fenerbahce come into this having won all of their last 4. Lyon come into this having not won any of their last 3. So, form is on Fenerbahce's side. Lyon aren't playing good stuff at the moment. Both sides have players suspended. Mulder is going to be missing for Fenerbahce. Tagliafico is going to be missing for Lyon. Both sides have key players injured. Livakovic, Fenerbahce's goalkeeper, is injured. But Lacazette, Lyon's main goal scorer, is injured for them. So, again, it just makes it so tough to call. But I'm favouring Fenerbahce. What I would say is I would expect goals in this game. Both of these sides have been involved in a fair few high-scoring matches since the winter break. So I'm going for 3-2. I just think, again, there is definitely a chance that either side comes out on top here. But I'm backing the home side to get the result in this one. Next up, it is a battle of the sides in 15th place in their domestic leagues. And what a disastrous spell it has been for both of them. Hoffenheim, 15th in the Bundesliga. Tottenham, 15th in the Premier League. Both sides have only had 1 win each since the start of December. Now, for Spurs, that was in December. For Hoffenheim, thankfully for them, it was at the weekend. And it was an away game as well. So, at least that gives them a little bit of momentum coming into this. Both sides also have horrendous injury lists. At least for Hoffenheim, they've had no new injuries coming into this one. But for Spurs, Solanke's now injured. Brennan Johnson could be injured. And that's list added to that entire list of all of their defenders and a couple of their midfielders missing as well. At least no one's got anyone suspended for this one. But, I mean, how are you supposed to predict how this one's going to go when both sides' form are through the floor? Both sides have major injury concerns. I'm just going to go for the team that should have a little bit of momentum coming into this and the team that needs the points more than the other, which is Hoffenheim. I'm going to go for 3-2. Spurs will be safe in the playoffs. I can't see them losing both games, so they should be good for at least the playoff spot. But Hoffenheim need to get a result here, especially since they have an away game in their final match. And I'm backing them to get it. I'm going for 3-2 to Hoffenheim. Now we have two sides that are very desperate for points. 31st and 30th, Malmo and FC Twente. Both sides are 4 points off the playoff spots at the moment, so they cannot afford to realistically drop any more points if they're going to get themselves there. For Twente, it's 4 draws for their 4 points so far. For Malmo, it is, of course, 1 win and 1 draw. It's, again, both of these sides drew on matchday 6, so it's going to be tough. Malmo got a draw with Galatasaray. Twente got a draw with Olympiacos. That's 2 good results as far as I'm concerned. So in terms of Europa League form, they're both going to look at this fixture and think, well, we can probably win this. That said, though, Malmo haven't played a competitive game since matchday 6, whereas Twente have, but they've been losing. So it just, how are you supposed to call these matches? It's just ridiculous. For me, I look at it from the perspective of Twente have really struggled, especially away from home in recent times, but Malmo are still not that fresh. So for me, Twente should be considered the favourites, but again, I just don't really know where to put it. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Next up, it's Qarabag taking on FCSB, and well, this is a really even more interesting one, because both of these sides have only played 1 game each since coming back from their winter breaks. Qarabag were able to get a victory at home. Meanwhile, FC were only able to draw at home, and that was due to a late equaliser. Thankfully for them, they've had no fresh injury concerns coming into this, and neither of them have anyone suspended. So both sides will be coming into this with a fairly decent sort of status in terms of the squads. The problem is, when it comes to predicting this one, is that Qarabag have lost 5 of their matches so far, which includes all 3 of their home matches so far. Meanwhile, FCSB have managed to secure 3 clean sheets in a row in this competition. So that's where I'm sort of edging it. Obviously, FCSB have I can't say the blooming name right, Steaua Bucharest are in a much better position. They can afford to draw this and still have a very good chance of getting a playoff spot, even potentially a last 16 spot. For Qarabag, they desperately need to win and basically need other teams to lose by significant margins on both match days 7 and 8. So I can see that being their downfall. They're going to be a little bit too desperate. FCSB, I can't still say it right, are much better defensively, and I'm going to back them to get the result. I'm going to go for a very, very narrow 1-0. I definitely think another 0-0 is on the cards for this one if they just purely try to play it out. But I can see them potentially getting one on the break and getting the result. But we'll see. I'm going for 1-0. And then the final early kickoff on Thursday sees Viktoria Plzen taking on Anderlecht. Pilsen's unbeaten run in this competition finally came to an end with defeat at Old Trafford on match day 6. For Anderlecht, they are unbeaten in the Europa League. They are playing some very, very good stuff in this competition. But they're not having the best of forms domestically at the moment. They did get a win at the weekend, but that was after a fair few poor results for them. They also do have the likes of Kasper Dolberg, Samuel Edozie, Jan Vertonghen, all missing through injury, whereas Pilsen are in a much stronger position in terms of their squad, and they are still in a good position. Pilsen are still 2 points within the playoffs places. Anderlecht are 3 points within the last 16 places, so a victory in this match will be enough to secure them a spot in the last 16 guaranteed, whereas Pilsen could arguably afford to lose or even just draw this and still be in a good position to get a playoff spot next week. I would expect Anderlecht to be the favourite for this one, but we know how good Plzen can be, especially when it comes to their home form. But I'm still going to go for Anderlecht. I'm going to go for 3-1. I just think with how difficult it's been for Plzen, they're another side that hasn't played since their winter break started. I just think there's a little bit too much momentum in Anderlecht's favour here, so I'm going for them. That rounds off all of the early kickoffs on Thursday. And yeah, genuinely, you can see how narrow I've put these scorelines. It's so tough to call them all. So let's skip ahead to the late kickoffs on Thursday, where we can finally have a fixture that I'm happy to talk about, because if I don't call this one right, then I would expect something has gone very much wrong for Eintracht Frankfurt, because they should definitely be getting a victory in this one over Ferencvaros. Frankfurt have won all of their last 3 matches in all competitions, which includes a 2-0 victory over Borussia Dortmund of the Champions League at the weekend in the Bundesliga. For Ferencvaros, they're in the middle of their winter break. They've not kicked a ball since matchday 6. And on matchday 6, they lost 5-0 to PAOK. So surely Frankfurt should be pretty comfortable in this one. In terms of injuries and suspensions, both sides have no fresh concerns coming into this. In terms of where they need to be, Eintracht Frankfurt very comfortable in their position so far. Ferencvaros probably need at least 1 more point, but they do have a home fixture against AZ next week where they've got to be prioritising that. Obviously, they'll try and get something here, but I don't see it happening. Frankfurt, for me, comfortable favourites, should be winning this one. I'm going for 4-0 to them. But, of course, there will be no Marmoush for them, as he is potentially, or more than likely, making his move to Manchester City ahead of this game. Next up, it's Elfsborg taking on Nice. And, I mean, poor old Nice. We've spoken about them enough times in this competition. They have been ravaged by injuries. It's just not been a good tournament for them. But, despite being 35th, it's still mathematically possible that they can still get themselves into the playoff places, but even victory in this match could see them eliminated on Thursday night. In terms of Elfsborg, guess what? They're in the middle of a winter break. They've not played any competitive football since matchday 6, whereas Nice have actually been working their way back up the Ligue 1 table as they've been getting their players back to fitness. They're on a pretty decent run of form domestically. They did lose at the weekend, but it was the Champions League side Lille, who, as we mentioned yesterday, are an incredible unbeaten run themselves. But before that, they were picking up wins left, right and centre. So I actually look at this game now. I look at how Elfsborg have played in this competition, and I think Nice should be considered the favourites. I really do. Unless they've completely given up on this competition, that would be the only thing. But, like I say, it's worth them going for it this week. And then if they're eliminated on Thursday, then they can rotate their players next week when it doesn't matter. I'm expecting Nice to get the win here. I'm going for 2-0 to them. To be fair, Elfsborg don't have any fresh concerns coming into this, but they're teetering on the brink. They're in 24th. They've got teams breathing down their neck. And come the end of Thursday night, Nice will probably be one of them. Next up, it is the leaders of the Europa League, Lazio. They are taking on Real Sociedad. And for Lazio, it's only been 1 defeat at home all season long, albeit that was a 6-0 defeat to Inter Milan. Meanwhile, Real Sociedad, they've lost their last 2 away matches in La Liga, including losing to bottom club Valencia at the weekend. But they do still find themselves in a pretty decent position in this Europa League so far, only being 1 point off the last 16 matches. And they have back-to-back wins and back-to-back clean sheets in their last 2 match days in this competition as well. I just think travelling to Lazio, though, with how good they've been, yes, as we mentioned, they did lose to fellow Europa League side Roma recently, but they're still in the top 4 of Serie A at the moment. They're playing some really good stuff, especially at home. They do, though, have Pellegrini and Gigo suspended. Meanwhile, Lazzari and Vecino are missing as well through injury, whereas Sociedad only have Hamid Traore missing for them. I would still expect Lazio to come out on top, though. I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to the Italian side. That then takes us to another potentially difficult one to call between Ludogorets and FC Midtjylland. And this is a bizarre circumstance because both of these sides are actually in the midst of their winter break. So neither of them have played for ages, but both of them have been taking part in friendlies against Champions League sides this week. Young boys for Ludogorets and Salzburg for Midtjylland. And on both occasions, it was the Europa League side that came out on top over the Champions League side. So fair play to both of them for their respective results there. But for Ludogorets, in terms of this match, it's must win for them. They are 4 points from the playoff spots. Midtjylland are one of those sides currently occupying those 7-point spots, as it were. They're 23rd. They're 1 point or one place within the playoffs, but they're one of the many sides on 7 points hanging in the playoff spots at the moment. They also have a lot of players back from injury. They've had a huge injury crisis this season, have Midtjylland. They still have their first choice goalkeeper, Olafsson. He's still injured. He's got a broken arm. But they have a fair few of their younger players, their midfield players, back fit and ready for this one. So I would consider them the favourites for this. But with Ludogorets, it's absolute desperation zone for them. Like I say, they're 4 points from the playoffs. They've got this game this week. Then they're away to Lyon on match day 8. So they cannot afford to drop points in this one. But I actually think, again, like we spoke about with the Steaua Bucharest game later, I think the side further down the table, desperately trying to get the win, is going to end up being the reason that costs them. So I am going to go for Midtjylland here. I'm going to go for a 3-2 victory to them. Then we have to talk about Man United again. And as much as I love talking about Manchester United on this channel, as a Manchester United fan, I don't like talking about Manchester United when I don't have any faith in them getting a result, especially when it's against a side from Scotland. And look, again, we have to be realistic. I have to do my job professionally when it comes to these prediction series. There's 1 point and one place between these two sides. Both sides desperately want to win here because they want to secure themselves a spot in the last 16 without having to go through the playoffs. Manchester United have not kept a clean sheet for 11 matches in a row. Rangers have kept back-to-back clean sheets and drew with Spurs on match day 6. They are playing some very good stuff in this competition. They have only, I think, lost one of their last 7 matches. Manchester United have only won one of their last 7 matches. There is a lot of things going in favour of Rangers here. In terms of injuries and suspensions, no fresh concerns of Manchester United. Diomande suspended for Rangers. I just can't do Man United to not beat a Scottish side. It would be an embarrassment. Not that we've not had embarrassments all season long, but we have to beat Rangers. We have to. It would be no. 2-1 Man United. But genuinely, Rangers have a very good chance of getting minimum a draw here. Minimum a draw. I'm just putting that biased hat on once again and saying there is no way Man United lose to Rangers. I'm going 2-1 Manchester United. Next up, it's PAOK against Slavia Prague. Slavia, again, not played since mid-December. They're in the middle of a winter break. PAOK have played 4 times since their break and haven't won any of them. So it's a bizarre situation again coming into this one. But as we already mentioned, in their last match day in this competition, they did win 5-0 over Ferencvaros. Plus, Slavia have lost all of their last 4 matches in the Europa League. So for me, PAOK definitely do need to be considered the strong favourites. They do have some injuries though. The likes of Dejan Lovren, Colley are missing for them, and Kamara is suspended. There are no concerns for Slavia, but even though their domestic form hasn't been great over the last few weeks, their form in this competition has been very good, has PAOK. So with them being the home side here, with Slavia really struggling in this competition over the last few match days, I'd be remiss if I didn't go for a PAOK victory here. I'm going for a 3-1 victory to the Greek side. 2 matches left then. First of those sees RFS taking on Ajax. RFS are a side that haven't even played a friendly that I could find on record since match day 6. And they're only on 2 points, so they desperately need to win both of their remaining matches. And even then, it may not still be enough to get them into the playoffs. For Ajax, they are 1 point off the last 16 places, but they don't have a left back for this one. Hato suspended, Window's injured, and I believe they're selling Wrench. I can't say his name properly, who I believe can play left back. He's normally a right back. He's now been sold, so be interested to see what they do at left back in this one. But against a side that has really struggled in this competition, I would be surprised if Ajax don't come out on top here. To be fair, they did lose to fellow Europa League side AZ Alkmaar, as we mentioned earlier on in this video. They did lose to them in the cup, so there may not be full of confidence, but outside of that result, they have been performing very, very well. I'm just trying to create some drama here. I'd be shocked if Ajax don't get the result. I'm going for a 3-0 victory for them. And then finally, it's Union Saint-Gilloise taking on Braga. And my word, there are suspensions everywhere in this one. And best believe that Kevin McAllister will not be home alone for this one, because he's not the only player suspended for Union. They also have Van Hoot and Kaleli out for this one, all through suspension. Meanwhile, for Braga, they have their goalkeeper suspended because he was sent off on their matchday 6 loss to Roma. So, again, bizarre circumstances going into this. There's only 1 point that separates them, but Union are the side currently in the playoffs. Braga are teetering on the edge, trying to get themselves in. They're the only side that are on 7 points that aren't currently in the playoffs. They are currently missing out on goal difference, but Union, even though they have multiple suspensions, they are a very good side at home. They're playing well domestically. They are the home side in this one, and I just think they're going to come out on top in this. To be fair, both sides have won their last 2 matches domestically, but I'm going to go for the Belgians. I'm going to go for a 2-0 victory to Union Saint-Gilloise. And that is going to be it for this incredibly difficult Europa League predictions video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Try and give some more insight to everyone else in the comment section, because it is so tough to call nearly every single one of these matches this week. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I'll be back with that post-match reaction to Manchester United Rangers on Thursday night, so I'll see you there.